The PRovoke Podcast, brought to you by PRovoke Media and produced by the international broadcast specialist Marketeers.
Hello, and welcome to the PRovoke Media Podcast. We are recording here today from JPA Health's brand new Philadelphia office.
That's
which
right.
is beautiful. I'm happy to have Adam Pawluk, who is head of labs for JPA, here with me. Hello.
Hello, it's nice to be here.
It's nice
welcome to JPA Philadelphia.
This is good. I like it. It's like a road trip, and here we go. So, Adam, if you could, before we start our conversation, tell us what labs is.
Yes, so I love this question because we are an all healthcare agency. Lab can mean a lot of things. For us, we really think of it as a hub for innovation in the agency. Across this team is everything from data analytics to the engagement team to creative, all sitting together. And part of our model is for kind of seamless collaboration across those teams. And so any and all of our clients can benefit from all of that expertise or any component of it, kind of depending on the assignment.
So you are the crux stone.
And I'm the glue that holds it together.
Everybody comes all roads lead to Adam, which is a good thing.
Yes.
Today, however, we're going to speak specifically about radical compassion in organizational leadership.
Yes.
How did you find that?
So a big part of my job is innovation.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the core values of JPA Health is compassion.
Mm-hmm.
And, as even just getting ready for this conversation, as I was kind of digging into the topic, I realized there is a ton of research out there kind of validating the connection between compassion or empathy, we can kind of mush those together,
right.
and innovation. And a lot of that compassion needs to start at the top,
yes.
which I think is interesting. And, do you want to be feared as a leader,
mm-hmm.
or do you want to create an environment where people can kind of experiment?
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's an interesting question, and it's interesting for me to see sort of the research that says, hey, when you are a compassionate, caring leader, creating a safe space for your people, you're really creating an environment for people to thrive and experiment and innovate.
And would you say this idea of compassionate leadership is new or has been in development? Because we, typically or stereotypically, the boss has always been the tough guy or the tough woman and, cracking a whip, and clearly that's not what this is about.
Yes.
So is this a new idea or an idea that's been in process?
It's actually not a new idea at all. And it depends how you define new. And so
right.
the research that I was, finding goes back 10 years even, and continuing since then to be more recent. What I think is interesting is it feels to me like we're in a moment where innovation doesn't feel like it comes from a place of compassion. Leadership doesn't feel like it comes from a place
right.
of compassion. And there's a lot of fear out there.
Right.
And, I think fear in some ways, I think can run sort of counter to creating innovation.
Right.
So it's an interesting moment, I think, for us to be exploring this topic.
Absolutely. So when we talk about fear, I'm going to make the leap that we're talking about the outside world, all the uncertainty, all of that, not necessarily at work. Although
right.
I think even leaders, to some degree, are a little fearful and making their taking steps accordingly, at least in their dealings with the outside world. But
yes.
inside, is this then a time for heightened compassion?
I think yes. So it's interesting, as an agency that runs on people,
mm-hmm.
in addition to increasingly runs on technology and platforms,
right.
And just the pressure to innovate. I think we can't be a walled garden, right? We live in the world, our clients live in the world, the people we're trying to reach and engage with, that all exists in the context of the outside world. So there's no way to keep that at bay.
Right.
And we're running a business at the end of the day, right? We have to do what's in the best interest of the business. But in the course of that, we have to show people we care, and and we care about them as individuals, and we care about them as professionals. And I think that goes a long way in encouraging a team to experiment and explore new things.
So how does this compassion, I mean, you've seen it lead to innovation. You think it gives people the freedom to innovate? To me, it boils down to psychological safety. And when people feel safe, they are not afraid to make mistakes. They're not afraid to raise issues. They're not afraid to bring a problem up to their boss or even higher. And those types of engagements are the ones that I think really can be transformative for an organization. If people aren't bringing up the tough problems and feeling like it's okay to do that, you can't solve them. Right. But given the course of organizations and employment and cross generations, there's a lot of factors at play here. How safe are people really feeling to do that?
I mean, let's be honest, right? I don't think there is an industry, and as we're having this conversation, I think it was just a couple days ago, I think it was the head of the CEO of Anthropic, just talking about like the white collar bloodbath that's going to come as a result of AI.
Right.
And he's effectively pleading with policymakers and leaders at a national level to like get ahead of this. I think there isn't a professional who is attuned to what's happening in the world who isn't thinking about what this means for them as an individual, but then also as leader of an organization, you also need to think about what does this mean for my organization, and how can we. This is a transformational moment. For our clients, right. For agencies, for society at large. And so in moments of transformation, you can come out in a really exciting, positive, powerful place. And I think that the key is activating the right levers to get to that positive outcome, and mitigate, not even necessarily minimize, but mitigate kind of the negative side effects.
When we talk about leadership and compassion, though, is that the same for internal communications and dealings with an organization and external?
Please elaborate on your question. This is interesting.
So internally, you want to create a safe space, right? You want your people to feel good, to come to work. You want to build morale, all of that. You're a CEO, though, and you're dealing with the outside world. And you have to carve your space for your company. In terms of people, is there room for compassion?
Are you thinking of
I don't know what
the need? I know. Well, no, but it's interesting because it's like to be competitive, right?
Yeah, and I think you have to be competitive. You have to carve your space. It's a tough world out there. Business leaders are in a tough spot. You have to lobby technically or not technically, right? Rhetorically. You have to go for what you want. Maybe you have to go against regulators. All of that. Is compassion different on the outside, and then you come back and show your employees? That
doesn't fly. So having two faces does not work in the world we exist in anymore. Okay. And I think successful leaders are saying the same things outside as they are inside. And we've seen so many emails get forwarded from internal emails get forwarded to the media. Right? I mean, so you have to have a consistent message and a consistent voice. And being a compassionate leader does not mean you aren't fighting to tooth and nail, to either beat your competition or help your clients beat their competition.
Right.
That isn't what it means. I think we treat compassion as a competitive advantage.
Not a weakness.
Not a weakness. And it's actually hard to be compassionate. It's hard to care about what happens to people. It's a lot easier not to.
Absolutely.
Right? Yeah. And so, but when you really lean into that, I think you find a lot of exciting solutions to problems. So.
Okay. How does this idea affect specifically the PR and communications industry?
That's a great point. So I talked just a moment ago about that two-face,
yes.
right?
Yeah.
Saying the same thing inside that you are outside. I think the idea of message consistency is more important than ever.
Right.
You have to say the same thing inside and feel totally comfortable that it will become public information.
You just have to assume it's going to be public. Right?
Yes. Email, all of it. And then just given all of the multitude of platforms now that leaders and executives that are our clients or physicians, and we're a healthcare organization, all the different platforms that exist to tell a story, it's really important that you're saying a consistent message across every platform as a communicator.
Right. How are companies doing in this?
Well, it's inconsistent, and
right.
I think it's inconsistent. But there's one example that I think cuts across industries, including healthcare, would be Microsoft, for example. And this idea of compassionate leadership and that leading to innovation. Satya Nadella is one of those folks who is known for kind of his empathetic approach to leadership. And I think that's an example of an organization that is doing it very well.
How so? What is his compassionate approach? Example of it.
Yeah. Well, so there's a story that I read the other day about what led to this aha moment for him, and it was the birth of his son, who has cerebral palsy, and he, at first he was like, "Woe is me! Why is this happening to me?" And on the other hand, he saw his wife going to all these appointments, just fighting to give this kid the best possible chance that she could. And sort of in a moment of reflection, he said, "You know what? This didn't happen to me. This happened to my son.
Right.
So let me use every possible resource I have to help this guy have the best possible life he can."
Right.
And then it applies to then also the work that he does at Microsoft. And so accessibility and using AI and other tools to help people with disabilities thrive, becomes part of his remit. And I think that's a really interesting blend of those two concepts.
It is, but and there are other instances of that, though, where sometimes leaders, kind of like you don't know what you don't know until you've been in it.
Yes.
In this case, disability, it's you don't feel it or know, but
yes.
I guess being open to hearing about it is part of the battle.
Well, and let's be honest. We're all motivated by different things, and some, and there are leaders who are just looking at the bottom line, and I think, but if they see an impact on their bottom line, and I won't name names, but when people start to see an impact on their bottom line as a result of things they're saying or how they're delivering messaging, they will make a change.
So, what are some examples of this compassion in your own work that you can tell us about?
So we're a healthcare agency. So all we do is healthcare, and I would like to think pretty much everything we do is based in compassion. But a couple of examples of this. One is a recent project that we did for a client in oncology, and we're working to sort of transform the whole narrative around biomarker testing, and we realized that a lot of the messaging and campaigns were not really speaking to the people, sort of how they conceived of their lung cancer experience, or as a patient. And
what was it speaking to, just so I know? Like more medical, more scientific?
Medical, scientific, but also lacking the hope and element of fighting that people with lung cancer today exhibit. And so as a result of that, kind of that understanding of the patient and what was missing for them in those communications, we created a whole campaign that was really very sort of positive focused about, actionable specific things that they could do. We had celebrities and influencers and people who very much spoke to this target, but talking about it on their terms and in ways that were forward-looking, because now people with lung cancer can very often look forward to a very long life. And so the way we talk about treating it needed to change as well.
And so what's the psychological safety that comes with a compassionate environment? I'm trying to keep track of everything. Why is that so important to have in the problem solving and the innovation process?
Say it one more time.
Why does psychological safety matter so much in creative problem solving?
Okay. If we've all been in a brainstorm. I mean, I presume everyone on Earth at this point has been on. Right. Has been in a brainstorm. When you have an idea and it's crazy and it's weird, but you think it's solving the problem, you have to feel safe in that group to bring it up.
Right.
And you have to know that once you breathe that into the ether, it's going to be treated with care.
Correct.
And you won't get any demerits. It's not going to harm your career. It is a safe space to go wild. And I think that is sort of the underlying crux of this. We're in this together. Give me a moment to talk this through. I know this is going to sound crazy. I'm going to go out on a limb. I am putting myself at your mercy.
Hey, taking a risk.
I'm taking a risk. I think it is really important for people to have that sort of feel safe doing that as often as possible.
What are some pitfalls or misconceptions about this?
Well, I think you started with a good one, and that is that compassion is weakness. Compassion is soft. Right. And it is caring about people, and it is concern for people, but it isn't weak. And it can be very hard to be compassionate and care about all of the downstream effects of something that you're doing.
Yeah, and you have to break down, I imagine, not only people's personal habits or wiring, right? But we're talking about generations of leadership training and organization and what's expected or correct.
Yes. One thing that I think is interesting is, and not surprising as I dug into it, but a lot of the research about compassionate leadership is from sort of equity-focused organizations. And it's and it's been a long time since I've said the word equity, right? Because it's not something we talk about a lot. But I mean, it's about giving everyone a voice and letting people, creating that safe space for people to kind of bring their full selves to solve a problem.
Right, and this, we won't go down this road, but this can tie back to this can talk back to the gamut of issues that we discuss as part of the industry.
Yes.
And all of that. So looking ahead, how do you see the effect of this concept of compassion affecting the formation of organizations?
So I think we will find, there are some traits that are fundamentally human, and only a human can exhibit them. We only have the chemical makeup to do it, right? I can feel something. So I think as we progress in this AI age, this machine-fueled age, which is exciting and scary, but I think we will really come back to leaning on those traits that make us singularly human. Compassion, care, these moments that we could just, there's electricity in any engagement with someone. Those are the things that I think we're going to come back to more and more and more. Experiences, being together, versus something that is artificial or technical.
When you were describing that, I was going to say it's actually like being a person,
yes.
right? The real, you said artificial, but the realness of just being yourself, being a person. We hope.
Yes.
Now, before we sign off, not that I'm rushing us, you have some prompts.
Oh.
And
so let me just see. So this I thought was interesting. This is some hard data. Okay. This is some hard data that shows in organizations that have compassionate leadership and where people sort of feel that safe space that we talked about, 61% of them feel like they can always be innovative and always contribute exciting new thinking. In organizations where they do not have that safety, 13% feel that way.
That's amazing.
Isn't that incredible?
Huge, because you can think of the deficit or what's not getting done at those other organizations is really, with the 61%, is it just people's personal issues?
Okay. Maybe. Like, why isn't it 100? Yeah. You know, I mean, you know, it's not everyone.
Have our stuff.
Not everyone feels safe all the time, but I mean that is quite a difference, I thought.
Oh, absolutely.
And then one more that I'll just talk about is I just thought this was interesting. Mm-hmm. The National Health Service, and so they in the UK, they've done a ton of research on their own teams and their own staff. Mm-hmm. You know, that can be a crucible of tension in an ER or any sort of medical frontline environment. They found, I just think that I wanted to get this right because I thought this was innovation is often spurred by a challenge or a problem. Right. And compassionate leadership is a powerful facilitator at each stage of the problem-solving process.
Okay.
So
that comes from the NHS?
That comes from the National Health Service, and that's a quote from their report on sort of their findings of inside their own institution. They found organizations that did have that compassionate leadership were more successful at delivering positive patient outcomes and delivering innovative solutions to those challenges. And I thought what was interesting about this was that each stage of the problem-solving process, and when we started this conversation, we talked about identifying the problem, elevating it, you know, to a superior, feeling safe bringing solutions. I mean, there is a whole process, and you need to feel safe at every point in order to truly get to an innovative solution.
Well, this citation coming from the NHS made me realize, I mean, throughout this conversation, I've been envisioning corporate leaders and companies, but you get into government bodies or academic bodies which are very bureaucratic and have lots of layers, and that too, though, as they say, can benefit from compassion.
Yes, 100%.
Okay, so you're like an ambassador now for compassion.
Yes.
You might be showing up.
I'm a compassion enthusiast.
I like that. That is a good club to be part of.
Yeah.
All right, great. Well, it's, as always, a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you, Diana. It was a pleasure.
Compassionately having a conversation.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for having me.
You've been listening to the PRovoke podcast, brought to you by PRovoke Media and produced by the international broadcast specialist Marketeers.